Hi, everybody. So we're gonna go through a few things today. We're gonna show you the anatomy of the establishment smear. Okay. So I don't know if you saw this. This was in the Washington Post. It was by Dave Weigel, right? Dave Weigel, our mustachioed friend. Dave Weigel, who wears a fake mustache because he thinks it's funny. And he writes for the Washington Post. Now, let's remember, the Washington Post led us into the war. They're lapdogs to power, just like Chomsky says. And right now, their owner has a $600 million deal with the fucking CIA. You think I'm kidding? That's from the Nation magazine. By the way, Nation magazine, they took that article down. So there it is. So now so we know this, right? So when they're going to start writing stories trying to debunk fake news, you're going to go to a newspaper that has their owner has a $600 million deal with the fucking CIA and they don't disclose it. That's the part. That's the horrible part. It's all horrible, but what's even more horrible is they don't disclose it. So that's called unethical journalism. That's the opposite of journalism. So now what they're doing is lying to you and keeping secrets. They're supposed to tell you the truth. So Dave Weigel writes this for the Washington Post. He's going to debunk fake news, even though he works for a newspaper that's in bed with the CIA, and they've been printing CIA stories without checking them. So they've been filing false story after false story after false story because they're in bed with the CIA, and they print stories about, hey, Russia hacked our power grid in Vermont. Totally fake story. And they printed it, and it's still at their news. You go there, it's still there. Totally made up story. Fed to the Washington Post from the CIA. They printed it uncritically. And they said it was anonymous sources. Did you know the Washington Post didn't even call the electric company in Vermont? They didn't even call the public utility. They didn't call anybody to check the story. They just fucking printed it. And it's still there. So just so you know. So we all know this, that they're in bed with a $600 million deal with the CIA. Although if you bring it up to the reporter, the guy who's trying to fucking debunk fake news, if you bring that up to the reporter who's trying to debunk, which is what happened. There he is. That's Dave Weigel. And then someone brought it up. This guy, Russ G. Lewis, he says, hey, Washington Post made a $600 million deal with the CIA, and this guy is telling us we should believe him. And he links to a story from a website called hangthebankers.com, which I like. That sounds like a good website. So Dave Weigel, I don't know if he's the lead political reporter for the Washington Post. I'm pretty sure he is. So instead of doing the ethical thing and saying, yes, we know that and we should disclose it editorially, but it doesn't affect me. He could say a lie like that it doesn't affect me. Of course it does. That a guy has a deal, the owner of your paper has a deal with the deep state for 3 times what your own frickin' newspaper's worth, and you work for the establishment, and your paper beats the drum for war every time there's a war. Of course it affects you, you fucking... Now who's being naive, Kay? So instead of copping to it, Dave Weigel lies in public about this. He lies to this guy who brings it up. So now if Dave Weigel had a shred of ethics and integrity, if he had a shred, he would go, yeah, you're right. Because, by the way, this is just a regular person. This Russ G. Lewis, he doesn't have a blue check. Russ G. Lewis is not a big shot. So Dave Weigel doesn't have to treat him with any respect, and he doesn't. So the guy's telling the truth to Dave Weigel. Dave Weigel, instead of being a guy with integrity and character and admitting it and going, you got me. Yeah, that's a problem. He tries to gaslight the guy and smear the source. That's what they do. They smear the source, just like Dave Weigel smeared me, just like we're going to get to how they're smearing Greg Greenwald.
Well, quick side note, Jimmy. In the rules of argumentation, whenever somebody's first rebuttal is against a source, typically, of course, there's always exceptions, but typically that's because they got caught.
Yeah, he got caught. So Dave Weigel got caught. And what Dave revealed is that he's willing to knee-jerk lie in public. It also reveals he doesn't have much character, and he's a guard dog of the establishment. He works for a paper that beats the war for drum for war every frickin' time. So, and then he just blatantly tries to dismiss this guy, gaslight him, which is the equivalent of lying, and then he smears the source. That's what the reporter from the Washington Post, who's the guy who's supposed to be debunking fake news, This is how he handles it when someone confronts him with the truth about his newspaper. That's how he handled it. Just so you know, that's how Dave Weigel handled it. His knee-jerk is to lie. We showed another video that his knee-jerk was to lie. He was on a radio interview, and he got caught lying. The guy, he fell asleep, and the guy said, did you hear my question? He just lied. So Dave's knee-jerk is to lie. That's what that is. You tell me that isn't one of the biggest douche moves you've ever seen by a frickin' reporter. Dave has a lot of power. He has a column in the Washington Post, the political paper of note, and he has over 300,000 Twitter followers. He has a lot of power he's been given by the establishment. And how does he use it? He's always respectful to the establishment, but he shits on anybody who actually tells the truth about the corruption inside of his own newspaper. He lies, gaslights, and then it gets better. So then the guy went, by the way, he's like, oh, I can hardly brush aside the reporting of hangthebankers.com. That's what he said. So that's gaslighting, smearing. Those are another term for that is lying. That's because that's the lead reporter for the Washington Post. Now, I don't know. You tell me, does that guy have character? Is that the guy you want to be debunking fake news? Is that the guy you want? That's not the guy I want debunking fake news.
I can't take hangthebankers.com seriously. It just sounds too depressing, man. I write for the Washington Post where democracy dies in darkness.
Where democracy dies in darkness, and we think that Edward Snowden should be in prison. That's the Washington Post. That's another story. But getting back to this, so he's smearing, he's going to smear the guy's source because Dave Weigel knows that they're scrubbing that story from the internet. Because this story here, that's not at the Nation anymore. I'm sorry. That story is not at the Nation anymore. That's from the Internet Wayback Machine. They now have scrubbed that article. So it's hard to find sources for this information about the $600 million deal with the CIA and the Post, meaning Jeff Bezos. There he is lying about it, gaslighting and smearing the source. This is the guy who they have debunking fake news. This is the guy. And then when he went and got another source, Russ G. Lewis, he does this. I don't know if you can see that. He says, this is what Russ says. He says, here you go, Mr. Professional Reporter that apparently knows nothing about his own newspaper. And he links to zerohedge.com, and it says the CIA, Washington Post, and Russia. What you're not being told. So then Dave decides to stop lying, to stop smearing, and to stop gaslighting this guy who's just pointing out a fact about the conflict of interest inside the paper of note that all media critics say they should disclose when they write about the CIA, foreign policy, the deep state, WikiLeaks. They don't do it because they're unethical and they're in bed with the CIA. That's why they don't do it. And Dave Weigel is not allowed to put an editor's note next to that says that my paper's in bed with the CIA. He's not allowed to when he's writing attack pieces for the establishment. That's what this is. Now, why do I say it's an attack piece for the establishment about the Seth Rich? Because he attacked me in it, and he attacks other people. He smears them, right? He smears them. By the way, last people in the world to be debunking fake news is the Washington Post. You're in bed with the CIA. The story is about WikiLeaks and the CIA and everything else, and you don't disclose it. That just shows right on its face that you guys are lying and unethical. Dave Weigel, top of the heap. Ron, what do you think about that? By his response when he went and got the extra source, Dave Weigel's response was, "It was Bezos, not the Post. Now go away."
It was just our head guy, not the newspaper itself.
So Dave, are you telling me that Rupert Murdoch's business interests don't have any? So you're telling me that RT, the Russia Today, you don't call that propaganda, do you, Dave? Because it's owned by Russia. But your paper, which is really owned by the CIA, you're in bed with the CIA, three times what your paper's worth. That's not a conflict of interest. And when someone brings it up, you shit on like a true douchebag. That's a guy who treats people differently. Right? A gentleman treats everyone equally. Dave Weigel treats people beneath him shittily. He doesn't treat people above him. He doesn't speak truth to power. He shits on people below him. That's what just happened. I'm not making it up. I'm just reporting it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I like his logic. It's like, well, it's the guy that runs things. Not
It's just the guy who
newspaper
runs
itself.
everything.
Newspapers can't spend money, dummy. Huh?
So
Well,
what?
you know what, Jimmy, I just want to add, every time, when I see that the Washington Post, their mantra is democracy dies in
darkness.
To me, I think, well, it also dies in print.
Yes.
On your paper. There is no democracy. And it made me think about Edward Kennedy said, integrity is the lifeblood of democracy. Deceit poisons it in its veins. And that's how can you take any of these newspapers seriously when they got us into war?
Yeah. So, and not a little bit that the Washington Post. The Washington Post literally said, if you don't think they have weapons of mass destruction, you're crazy. They didn't say that. They said it is hard to believe how anyone could doubt that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and that they're in bed with the Al-Qaeda. That's what the Washington Post said. I knew that was bullshit. Ron knew that was bullshit. The million people in the streets knew that was bullshit. You watching the show knew. You know who didn't know that was bullshit? The Washington Post editorial board. Except they did know it was bullshit and they printed it anyway because they're lapdogs to power and they always beat the drum for war. Every newspaper does that, just so you know. And now you're going to take the Washington Post. So why do I keep bringing this up? Because so back to Dave Weigel's article. It's hilarious that Dave Weigel, a proven liar about fucking important stuff that has to do with this story, is now the guy in charge of writing. And this is, by the way, he's been assigned this by his bosses to go now. He went from being a watchdog of the establishment to being a guard dog of the establishment. Now he's an attack dog for the establishment. Just so you know, that's how it works. There's a video we showed in another video that proves that this is how this works. They've done academic studies. Okay, so here's, just to show you right off the top of this article, this is what he says about the WikiLeaks. We all know the WikiLeaks emails revealed that the DNC was cheating Bernie Sanders. And so we've showed you how Noam Chomsky said Bernie Sanders would have won if it wasn't for the party leaders cheating him. That's Noam Chomsky said that. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign after those WikiLeaks proved that she was not neutral and that every time she went on TV, she was lying about that. So those WikiLeaks emails had a big effect, right? And now those WikiLeaks emails even got the DNC to admit in court that they don't have to run a fair primary. Now they're telling people who are donating to them, we don't have to run a fair primary. In open court, they said that. So now guess what? Donations are down to the DNC. So there's a big effect from the WikiLeaks. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign. Donna Brazile lost her job. Was that because of the WikiLeaks? They caught her cheating, Donna Brazile lying. I forget how they exactly caught Donna Brazile, the head of the DNC.
The questions, too.
Yeah,
the
was
CNN,
that
CNN questions?
Yeah, was that revealed in the WikiLeaks? How did that get revealed? I know what she did. I just don't. But anyway, the WikiLeaks, Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign. We all know that they were cheating Bernie now. That's the whole thing. So there was but the establishment talking point, the Democrats say, oh, there was nothing in those emails anyway. But then they say Hillary Clinton lost the election because of those emails. You can't have it both ways, except they do because they're the establishment and they gaslight you. Just like when they say, we can't have single payer, it's too expensive. They're gaslighting you, okay?
Hacked emails from WikiLeaks showed that Donna Brazile had gotten the questions from.
So the WikiLeaks email showed that Donna Brazile was also a cheater and a liar. She lost her job at CNN. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign as chairperson of the party. And it revealed that they were cheating, that they don't run their primaries fair, and that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was a rock-bottom, all-day-long, 24/7 liar to her own people, half her own party. So it revealed a lot. Here's what Dave Weigel says. Dave Weigel literally in this article that is supposed to debunk fake news, he literally prints a talking point from the Democrats. And that he says the most effective conspiracy theories target both the left and alt-right. So he had to include me because he wanted to show how it's both. So that's why he included me in this, even though he does it inaccurately and unethically. Because we've already proven to you Dave Weigel is unethical and his knee-jerk is to lie even publicly. So, and that's maybe the mustache is it tickles him. And here's what he writes. What's often forgotten about the DNC hack is how banal the emails were. That's a talking point that someone told Dave, his boss told him he had to put in this article. That's what that is. Dave Weigel. Do you think Dave Weigel thought that up himself? He didn't think that up. He was told to put that in the article. And if he wasn't told to put that in the article and he put that in the article anyway, that's worse. That's fucking worse. This guy's a big shot reporter. People don't think he's an idiot. By the way, just so you know, Dave Weigel was a Republican up until Trump. So he was cool with Sarah Palin. He's cool. He's cool with Huckabee. He's cool with John McCain. He's cool with Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. He's cool. He has all the information you have, and he was a Republican, and he's a reporter. Those things don't go together. You can't be okay with the status quo and then call yourself a reporter. But that's Dave Weigel. So just so you know, and so if he wasn't told to print that and he printed it anyway, that's worse. So he was told to print that, and he printed it. Again, if he didn't, there's a good chance that he wasn't told. I mean, there's a chance. But if he wasn't, and he printed that, God damn it. Is that guy, wow. You know. That's shitty writing. Now, Dave Weigel's not a great writer. I mean, as far as writing where you're entertained by it. If you want to see good writing, read my book. So I'll put my book and my writing up against this stuff any day. So here's this just to show you why this is a talking point and why Dave Weigel, if he had any character, would be embarrassed that he wrote that in a fucking newspaper article for the Washington Post. Here's a regular person on CBS News responding to the banal WikiLeaks emails. You want to see what a regular person thinks? Not an inside the beltway fucking out of touch mouthpiece for the establishment like Washington Post reporter Dave Weigel. You want to see what a regular person thinks about those banal emails? Here's what a regular person thinks. A voter.
I've been a Democrat all my life. I think the Democrats, not only are they out of touch, they have no interest in correcting the situation. They're not doing any postmortems. They're writing off, well, we don't own the White House because of Putin or because of WikiLeaks. What did WikiLeaks tell us, by the way? They, regardless of who was behind it, they confirmed that Hillary Clinton and the Democratic establishment are liars, and that they had their thumb on the scale, for Hillary Clinton. Well, so what are they basically saying? If we hadn't been caught lying, we'd be running the country right now.
But if you remember, super duper reporter for the establishment, attack dog for the establishment, Dave Weigel, he said the emails were banal. Except this guy says that. Except this guy who's been a Democrat all his life says they revealed that the Democrats are liars, and that they would be running the country if they didn't get caught being liars. But super duper reporter Dave Weigel is told to write a different story, so he prints fucking DNC talking points literally in his newspaper that's supposed to be debunking a fake. So I'm not saying you shouldn't debunk a false story. They don't do it, but they're the last people in the world, the Washington Post and Dave Weigel, who's I myself have caught lying about his own paper in public. And that was just accidental. I'm sure if somebody was actually tried to catch him, I bet he's doing it all day. He really doesn't have ethics, or else he would tell people in that article that the owner of his paper had a deal with the CIA. And that's what you're supposed to do ethically. And that's not me talking. That's the people who are watchdogs of media. That's fair that said that.
Can I add something about Donna Brazile?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm reading CNN Money. Okay, and it says in a telephone interview with CNN Money on Tuesday, Brazile said she was choosing not to view any of the emails stolen by WikiLeaks. This is exactly what the Russians intended to do, and they're doing it, she said. Brazile emphasized in that interview, I had no access to any questions for any debate of town hall.
Oh, and she lied.
We're not going to look at the emails, but we can tell you most of them are fake.
So she lied. So there's Donna Brazile lying. So they're lying all over. So Dave Weigel puts talking points in. He lies on Twitter about the connection between, and then he writes the story, which he shouldn't be doing. That's unethical without putting a note. And he should have put a note. By the way, I've been caught lying about this editor's note, which he didn't. Now, I know Dave Weigel personally, and I was shocked to see that he was that kind of a person. Like dislike that. Like I knew he was a Republican, so that tells you that he wants to be a reporter, but he's Republican. Why would you want to be a fucking reporter if you're a Republican? You're cool with the status quo. So that's Dave Weigel, just so you know. That's who he is. And he went to Northwestern. He grew up coddled or what have you.
I just want to spread the word that everything's going great.
Just want to spread the
be
word.
a reporter.
So get this. So now watch. So here it goes back to more of the establishment narrative about Bernie Sanders supporters. So this is the long article. I'm just picking out a couple of different spots. He writes, the Seth Rich conspiracy thrived not just because fringe conservatives like the idea of a break in the Clinton body count theory, but that the idea that someone would murder a leaker to cover up a conspiracy against Bernie Sanders would justify so much angst. So what he's saying is Bernie Sanders supporters want this to be true because it would, we're so upset, we're so angry and jilted, Bernie supporters. So again, it's that punch a hippie. He's punching left. See, these guys are crazy. They're the crazed Bernie Sanders people. By the way, Dave Weigel shits on Bernie Sanders on a daily basis on fucking Twitter. I could show you those tweets too. He shits on Bernie. He shits on the Bernie supporters. That's who Dave Weigel is. He's a reporter who shits on progressives, just so you know. That's who he is. It's total establishment to the hilt, baby. That's the Washington Post reporter, Dave Weigel, and he's writing this. The next live Jimmy Dore show is June 19th in Burbank, California, and July 15th in San Francisco at the Great Star Theater. For all links for all tickets to those shows and our full schedule right there, there's a link to jimmydoorecomedy.com. We'll see you at those live shows.